All right. Well, I would like to first start by thanking everybody here. Thank you for your time. I know everyone's very busy these days, but in addition, I really want to thank Ruching and Tom for putting this together and organizing the BioEM talks and also inviting me to talk about my recent project here. So before I introduce my project, let me first start by introducing myself. So I'm Heather. I'm the TEM applications engineer for Hitachi. I cover a wide range of applications spanning from materials to biological, covering the entire country and more. But with my research and my applications that I do, I really have a personal passion for cryo-EM and in particularly trying to make cryo-EM more accessible to everybody who may not be otherwise capable of having the technology. I work together with my collaborator Theo Humphreys at Fred Hutch in Seattle, and together we were able to offer a solution that might be helpful to the scientific community. Let me go ahead. Okay, perfect. So my first goal of my research is trying to democratize cryo-EM. So building a microscope that efficiently bridges the gap between sample preparation and high resolution data collection. A tool like this can really pose a lot of barriers, especially financially, to places like core facilities or universities, where they might have financial barriers, rather for the microscope or the cost of ownership and the maintenance of one, or even room reconstructions. There's a lot that goes into buying and owning a specialized microscope for one particular application. In addition to this, it is also important that a microscope like this is extremely versatile. So rather than having a microscope for just one type of application, in this case for cryogenic applications, my goal was also to build almost like a Swiss Army knife. I want to improve the versatility, a system that can support both room temperature and cryogenic temperature applications. This will provide these types of labs with greater accessibility, where they don't have to limit themselves on the applications they're able to do. And lastly, by having a lower financial barrier and an improved versatile microscope, my goal in the end is to try to make cryo-EM more accessible for everyone. So this will allow a wider demographic to have access to this type of technology in hopes to encourage more collaboration, diversify research approaches, which will hopefully open the door for more scientific breakthroughs for laboratories that may not have otherwise had this type of equipment, or for scientific breakthroughs that may have been or remained undiscovered. So these are my research goals for this project. But before we get into what I did and my methods, I wanted to first start and back up by talking about what is cryo-EM. I know a lot of people might not have a background when it comes to cryo-EM applications, so I kind of just wanted to build from the foundations and work our way up. So cryo-EM is just an imaging technique. We're able to take hydrated samples and then cool them down to cryogenic temperatures. This will allow us to see structures at atomic or near atomic resolution in their near native state. And so with cryogenic temperatures, we're able to eliminate the use of stain in order to get our sample as close as possible to its near native state within this fine layer of vitrified ice. Vitrified ice you can think about almost like plastics, where we want to have a very amorphous ice layer. Think about like your water bottle that you have. It's very transparent because it's an amorphous polymer. This is similar to amorphous ice or vitrified ice, where if we have crystalline ice that may otherwise damage our sample, this is like opaque and might not produce really great results. So our aim is to get vitrified ice to then have a nice clear sample. I have this little image here that kind of shows a very simplified approach to cryo-EM prep, where we have a very rapid liquid sample, and then we freeze it in its near native state, and then it's frozen in different orientations. So you can see those boxes there all in different orientations from the freezing process. And so why are we so interested in
I'm
cryo?
sorry to interrupt, but you're not sharing your screen.
Oh,
Oh, I can see her screen.
Can everyone else see my screen? I'm sorry
Yeah.
for any.
Has I can
Yeah, I
see.
can see.
Yeah.
Okay, I will continue on then. Sorry if you're not able to see my screen. So why is
I've got it now.
cryo-EM?
Thank you.
No problem. Great, thank you. So why is cryo-EM so important? Why are we so interested in this? Well, the first thing is structure describes function, and this can be seen in a lot of fields across structural biology and understanding structure. So the closer that we get to understanding the structure of a macromolecule, the more that we can understand its function. And so if we're able to get a sample close to its near native state, then we can really understand the function and discovery new insights with confidence. One example of this is, I think everyone here is very familiar with the SARS-CoV-2 vaccine, but we were able to understand the structure of the virus given genetic sequences, understanding the spike protein, and in turns we were able to develop new drugs and new vaccines for this type of virus, and in turns deliver a vaccine very quickly, close to quickly that we could, to help us as a community. So this is really important in just one application of cryo-EM. So let's just use cryo-EM for everything. If it's so powerful, if it's so important, why can't we just use it for everything? Well, it's only just one piece of the puzzle when it comes to structural biology. If we could just use cryo-EM as a technique to describe everything, I'm sure it'd be way more popular. But it is only one piece of the puzzle when it comes to understanding a whole structure of something. Each one will come with its own strengths and weaknesses, one of which is definitely resolution. So you can see the different methods will have different resolution and what they can resolve or what type of macromolecule or proteins that they'll be usable for. And so this is just a whole big pie. And so with cryo-EM, we're able to just get one slice of that pie. So cryo-EM itself, as a technique, is also divided into several different methods. It's just a one defining term for different techniques. So we have things like electron tomography, cryo-ET. We have electron diffraction or micro-ED. And then we have single particle analysis. I'm just going to simplify this as SPA, but single particle analysis is essentially taking these unique shadows. Earlier, I showed you that animation of all the squares frozen in different orientations. And this is essentially what SPA is looking at, is we're taking those unique projections of those orientations and we're lumping them together into 2D class averages. And then we can take those class averages to then create a 3D reconstruction. From that reconstruction, we'll be able to understand more about the function and the structure of that protein structure. If you're familiar with tomography, which I know is very popular when it comes to BioEM prep, this is very similar to tomography, but rather than tilting it, we're just looking at the static orientations to minimize any sort of radiation damage. So how do we go from a liquid protein solution to these 3D reconstructions? There's definitely a lot in between, and there is a lot that happens, and usually everything doesn't go as planned. But to kind of give an overall simplified workflow, well, we start with our purified protein, which also has its challenges as well of getting to this state. But once we get there, then we can enter a room temperature screening. We can look at different variables of the proteins at room temperature, correct it and do any changes, and then go back to screening. Once we are happy with what our sample looks like at room temperature, we can introduce more variables and then cool it down to cryo temperatures by plunge freezing it, and then we can observe new variables until we're ready for the final data acquisition. And so the biggest portion of this workflow is definitely going to be this screening process. This is a huge trial and error phase, and it comes with a lot of bottlenecks. It is just a repetitive process where we repeatedly prep, observe, change, and then do it all over again. And so there's a huge time commitment when it comes to this screening phase. And so we need to have researchers of all backgrounds and experience levels to be able to operate such equipment in order to run through this screening process for this workflow. And so with this type of instrumentation, we need something that's very intuitive and user-friendly to then help with this large time commitment and make it as easy as possible. And so when we talk about the instrumentation for these screenings, we can see that for room temperature, typically this is for like a negative stain application. We usually use, typically use a 120 kV thermionic transmission electron microscope. And then for cryotemperature screening, this can be done usually on a 200 kV field admission TEM. So very different microscopes are used between these two screening processes. Lastly, we won't talk much about this portion of the workflow, but the data acquisition is usually on a 200 to 300 kV high resolution field admission TEM. And so my question with my research project is, what if we can combine these two microscopes, and rather than having two separate microscopes to do two separate tasks of this workflow, what if we can just do it with one? And not only with one, but what if we can do something that's more affordable than a field admission and using a thermionic system? And so that is what I set out to do with my collaborator, is that what if we try to combine these two screening methods? And so the microscope that we used, of course, being a Hitachi applications engineer, we use the Hitachi 7800 transmission electron microscope. This is a 120 kV variable voltage microscope. And so rather than using a field admission, this is now a thermionic TEM, meaning it uses either a tungsten or a lab 6 source. And then the resolution is about 0.2 nanometers at 100 kV. And so with this type of microscope, it enables more affordability and able to purchase a thermionic system rather than a field admission. And also the cost of maintenance and ownership is decreased as well. In addition to that, the footprint is very compact. We're about 6.5 feet by 6.5 feet tall. So the process of room reconstructions is lowered, or as a lot of labs trying to look for new space, which is a big challenge these days, is also reduced. So we don't need to find as big of lab space to have this TEM in. In addition to that, the microscope is almost like we call it a 2-in-1, where we have both a high contrast and high resolution image capability in one single pole piece. This also enables us to enhance the versatility and kind of aim towards that Swiss Army knife type of application. So we are able to not only investigate cryo screening applications, but preserve all room temperature applications that I have shown here, involving both material science and biological sciences as well. So now that we determined the microscope, we also included a new retractable cold finger design that expands the versatility of the TEM. So this retractable system, we're able to preserve both the full functionality of all room temperature capabilities, but now when we want to do cryo screening, we can insert these what we call blades. So these blades are then inserted into the pole piece gap of the microscope and are located above and below the sample. So these style of blades will help the sample by acting as an anti-contamination device and also as a temperature control and keeping that surrounding area cold. And so when we're ready, we can go from room temperature applications to then cryo screening capabilities. To do this, we also need to have a cryo transfer holder. So this cryo transfer holder will enable us to keep that vitrified sample at cooler temperatures, prevent any melting or contamination, and we'll be able to maintain a low and steady temperature state over time. So in my work, I utilize the Simple Origin holder, which is based out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And this holder was able to maintain a steady temperature of approximately a negative 180 degrees C for over 10 hours. So we're able to get almost a full day's work out of this holder in observing cryo applications. So this holder, there's two different variables of it. We're either able to observe just regular standard 3mm grids, or we can also load in autoloader grids if you're familiar with like Thermo Fisher scopes. And so once we load the sample into the transfer holder using this cantilever design, we can then take the entire holder and put it into the microscope where it can undergo a 1-minute sample exchange time. So very quick and easy throughput to get a holder in, get it into the microscope column in a minute, and get ready for cryo screening applications. And so when it is ready to image, we have to make sure that we have a suitable environment within the microscope column. This is incredibly important so that we don't add to any contamination or melting or damage of the sample. And so in conjunction with the simple origin holder and the 7800, it was seen that we're able to hold a temperature of around negative 176 degrees C for over 11 hours, which is even longer than a full day. If you're willing, you can also think of that as almost like an overnight sample run. And not only were we able to hold this temperature for that amount of time, but we're also able to hold the vacuum for about 9.5 hours. So we're able to keep these conditions for a very long time. And we're also able to achieve these conditions very quickly. So in about 10 minutes time, we're able to cool the microscope down from room temperature to cryogenic temperatures in about 10 minutes. And I can show that data here with the change in the vacuum levels. So we're able to maintain this throughout the whole sample run and make sure that our environment within the microscope column is stable and secure for cryo observation. So now that we have the microscope and we have the equipment, we also need a type of software to automate this type of application. We're going to be collecting hundreds, if not thousands, of images during our acquisition. So we can utilize software such as Serial-EM or Leginon onto the 7800. So for my data, I utilize Serial-EM. This, I'm sure everyone here may have heard of it, but we use Serial-EM to first get a full grid montage. So we're able to see the full assessment of our grid and the condition of our ice. And from there, we're able to then pick out the best grid squares to then identify the best holes, and then image those grid squares to then capture our final data. And so we can see we're able to go from the full grid to the grid square to the whole data very fluently using Serial-EM. And so let's talk about the data. So I talked about the condition of the microscope and how we're able to hold these conditions for over 9 hours, but let's see what that data looks like. So the first thing I wanted to look at is the ability to hold these conditions at stable and low temperatures. And so the first sample that I used, very classic standard for cryo-EM, is apoferritin. So here, after 3 hours after the holder was inserted, you can see we have a very nice contrast, very nice resolution of apoferritin. These are roughly around 13 nanometers as a particle size. But then after 9 hours, so after the holder was inserted into the microscope column, we can see that the condition of the ice and the particle quality virtually stayed unchanged. So after 9 hours of imaging, the data is very similar to after 3 hours. So this is really great to know that we can achieve these conditions and still have reliable imaging capabilities even during the full 9 hours of the system. So to make matters even better, what I did after this is saying, okay, well, I collected this data in my demo facility here in Hillsboro, Oregon, and that is a very controlled environment, being a demo lab. So what if we took this and we put it in a very non-traditional, non-laboratory environment? And that's exactly what I did last year during M&M. So during the conference, on the actual show floor, we shipped in our microscope and we shipped in vitrified virus-like particles from New York Structural Biology, and we screened them right on the show floor in front of an audience, and we were able to capture really great data. You can see here with excellent ice quality and minimal contaminants right on the show floor. So a very non-traditional, non-laboratory environment. And if you don't believe me, we actually recorded it and we put it on YouTube. So you'll be able to see me clowning around and doing the actual sample run on the show floor in Cleveland. So now that we have the whole workflow here with the room temperature screening and the cryo temperature screening, and we're able to do it over 9 hours in traditional and non-traditional laboratory spaces, we can hit back on the data acquisition part. And we have national labs across the country that we can utilize for this high resolution data. for the reconstruction. So there's facilities all over the country. I've listed a few here, like New York Structural Biology, PNCC, S2C2. We're able to then ship in our screen samples to these facilities and then get high resolution data collection. And so what that looks like here is, well, if we took our apoferritin and our 2D classification, then we could get the full reconstruction to understand the structure of the apoferritin particle, and the same thing with the virus-like particles. So now we're able to go from our purified protein to our screening workflow using one instrument, and then go right to the data acquisition part. And so if I revisit my goals that I showed at the beginning, we can kind of go through them, and now we can offer this type of instrument and equipment to enable cryo-EM accessibility for everybody. So when it comes to democratizing cryo-EM, well, now we have a 120 kV thermionic system that offers affordability of both ownership and maintenance with a small footprint for less room reconstructions, and also enabled more applications without any compromises with both the high contrast and high resolution field. We can improve versatility and create this goal of almost like a Swiss Army knife. So we can now have a tool that does both room temperature and cryo temperature applications while still preserving all the room temperature capabilities we listed earlier. And we're able to reach these conditions starting from room temperature in a matter of minutes. So very quickly, can we cool down the scope and get it ready for cryo-EM? And then putting this all together, well, now we're able to provide opportunities to researchers everywhere and enable this encouragement for more scientific breakthroughs by having the proper instrumentation and the proper equipment. So laboratories that may not have had this opportunity before, whether it was financial barriers or space or other factors, now they might have an opportunity to get involved and get into cryo-EM with the proper technology. And so I hope with the research that I've done here, I'm able to give those opportunities to researchers. And so if you want to learn more, I have a recent publication in Microscopy Today, and I also have some upcoming events in Germany and Australia. I'm sorry, not in the US, but feel free to contact me at any time. I've listed my contact information here. And I just want to thank Ruching and Tom again for inviting me to talk about my project. It's something I'm very excited and passionate about. So I'm really happy I was able to share it with everyone here today. So thank you so much.